Hello, my name is Josh O, and my project is about social media's impact on political opinion of presidential policy. To begin with my research question, it's does the type of media a person uses for their political information impact their opinion of presidential policy? In specific, I want to look at the zero tolerance immigration policy enacted by the Trump administration by former Attorney General Jeff Sessions. This is because there was an immense amount of media backlash. And although there was this large amount of media backlash, President Trump's approval rating remains relatively stable. This stability in the approval, however, does not account for the fluctuations amongst those who consume different media. It seems possible that those who use the internet, particularly social media, will have a greater fluctuation in their approval of this particular presidential policy. This is also attributed to a gap in knowledge. There is not enough study that has gone into the internet and social media, but predominantly only in broadcast television, radio, and newspaper, which is why I thought it would be an interesting topic to base my project around. So when looking at existing literature, it is important that we have to keep in mind two big things. We have to keep in mind immigration and also media usage slash media exposure. When discussing immigration, we have to look at the Republican Party and the Democratic Party and see how, over the course of the last 20 years or so, the party platforms have really grown apart from one another. In 2002, both parties had platforms that addressed immigration as a critical threat to the United States. In 2019, self described Republicans, 78%, were far more likely than Democrats, 19%, to view immigration as a critical threat. Um, when looking at the Trump immigration policy, in April 2018, former Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced the zero tolerance policy, which significantly increased criminal prosecution of immigrants entering the U.S. without inspection through the Mexico border. Although many of the immigrants passing through the border were seeking asylum, the policy immediately criminalized all attempts to enter the U.S. This specific policy broke news headlines as it directly led to family separations. Many of the immigrant parents were sent to federal jail while their children were sent to the Office of Refugee Resettlement. During this period of separation, both the federal jails and the resettlement offices failed to keep track of the locations of parents and their children. The American government was directly responsible for nearly 3,000 children whom had been separated from their parents, and this policy deported hundreds of parents back to their origin countries as their child remained in the United States. And when looking at the devastation of this immigration policy and how President Trump's approval rating remains relatively stable, I think we have to look at the follow the leader effect coined by Gabriel Lenz. Um, Lenz finds that there's evidence to support the idea that citizens will not view their representatives in a negative light, even after learning that they support or enforce a policy that the citizens may oppose themselves. Um, he finds that oftentimes these citizens will actually abandon their preconceived notions on certain policies and will embrace the policies of their representatives, even if it doesn't have to do with what they personally believe. And adding on to that, I think Zahler's receive, accept, sample model also outlines a very interesting point in regard to opinions and opinion change. Um, Much of previous research has found links between media exposure and public opinion. When people have access to information, they are more likely to have an opinion on a particular topic. The political opinions that people have can be shaped by the information gathered through the particular media sources that the person is consuming. According to the receive accept sample model, information flow is an important factor that may help predict how different groups within society may form an opinion, but also change that opinion altogether. Zahler makes the case that a person's susceptibility to change their opinion on an important political issue is largely dependent on their political awareness. And I think that um, during the digital age in which we are currently living, I think that there has been an even greater divide that has occurred. While the movement to information online has made it easier to access information, it is worth bearing in mind that when compared to traditional media sources, political responsiveness is much lower online. That being said, within the use of the internet, there's an age divide that has occurred. Younger people are more likely than older people to participate in political content. This has led the way to digital activism that has been fully embraced by young people, and it also has encouraged the participation of young people to alleviate the problem. It seems that this enhanced level of political informedness could impact responsiveness to political information. So, my theory is that depending on the type of news media that people consume, there will be more or less fluctuation of presidential policy approval. Previous literature suggests that traditional news outlets have the least amount of fluctuation, and this is due to increased partisanship. It is seen that if there is increased partisanship, then there is increased stability of approval because people that are watching are conditioned towards a particular framing of the issue. And my first hypothesis is that those who utilize the internet to receive their political information will have greater fluctuation in their approval compared to users of other media. And this is because the internet has more points of view and also has a presence which allows for a more open discussion to occur. My second hypothesis is that younger people, ages 18 through 35, who use the internet to receive political information, will have greater fluctuation in their approval of presidential policies than any other group, all media forms considered. Um, this is because young people know how to use the internet from a very young age and are willing to incorporate different opinions and experiences in order to come to a conclusion. So, when looking at the results, the regression test that I decided to use is a difference in difference estimation regression. And it shows that all other relevant variables, even when controlled for, do not impact the approval of the policy as much as social media does. A difference in difference estimation regression is a type of regression that makes use of data to estimate a causal effect. It is typically used to estimate the effect of a specific treatment by comparing the change in outcomes. So, when looking at this chart in front of you, the first column is the approval of the Trump policy. This essentially is any immigration policy that made immigration stricter. So, when looking at Republicans, they are more likely to support any policy that made immigration stricter. And for those that are over 65 years old, it also shows that they were in favor and approved of um, higher restrictions for immigration. And in 2019, as a whole, we did see, even after the Trump administration's zero tolerance immigration policy, that there is still much approval uh, for immigration restrictions. However, if you look at the 2016 social media user, which looked at all social media users in 2016, there is a negative um, number here, which shows that there is disapproval amongst those who use social media to receive their political information. And if you look right underneath it for the 2019 a social media user, it accounts for all the variables listed above. So both Republican and those who are over 65 years old, if you look there, the value is a negative value, which shows that even when the two other variables were controlled for, if someone was a social media user, then they were more likely to disapprove of uh, the Trump immigration policy and any immigration policy that made it more difficult to enter the United States. Some alternative explanations is that the younger generations are more sensitive to social injustices, and especially with the constant uh, interpersonal communication that occurs on social media, there could be um, a more disapproving reaction amongst those who feel that social injustices are their top issue. Another explanation could just be the nature of social media. This is because there are many firsthand encounters that are displayed there by whistleblowers or those that are exposing someone for doing something. And this also attributes to the personal connection that exists on social media, which could explain why um, the outcome is what we discovered. For implications, I think it was really interesting that certain variables were um, not as important or important at all when looking at internet usage. For someone who was a Republican or over the age of 65, it didn't really matter. If they still used the internet predominantly to receive their political information, then they were more likely to disapprove of Trump's immigration policy. I think this attributes to the digital divide that overreaches age, gender, political affiliation that has been occurring. And looking towards the future at changing technologies, I feel as though um, as we move into the future with advancing technologies, like who knows if we will have something that is even more interpersonal than the internet, and the uh, results of the study may differ then. Thank you so much for watching my presentation. I really appreciate it.